iOS 26 has been out for a little over 1 month at this point. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the top hidden features in iOS 26. Hi, everyone. Mr. Hawkins with Hawkins Tech. And this is iOS 26 top hidden features. Now, I am not installed on the beta of iOS 26, although we are getting quite close to the first public beta. I'm on iOS 18.5, but there are some hidden features to talk about, and personally, this is one of my favorite features. Even though I love the ringtones that Apple have, it's always been nice to have custom ringtones, and you can now do that in iOS 26. So if you have ringtones selected in the Files app, different audio files, you have to trim them so that they can be 30 seconds long. But now you can have them as a ringtone under ringtones. You now can have custom ringtones instead of having to go into iTunes for your custom ringtones. You now can make them more easier. Also, in iOS 26, you can now screen incoming callers. So if a scammer calls you, you can now screen them where it will automatically pick it up on their end and asking them what's the reasoning that they're calling. You can now screen incoming calls or unknown calls in iOS 26. And you also have a new feature where if you're in another app, it could be any app, even YouTube Studio, and you're on hold, you will now get a notification letting you know when to pick up the call. In iOS 26, you now have spatial photos. If I go into a photo, although it's probably not going to work, I took a lot of these photos and I ended up re-downloading them from Google Photos, as I deleted most of them to put some different photos in here. So that I did that, the live functionality isn't working for some reason. But you do now have live photos in iOS 26, or spatial photos. You can turn your iPhone left or right, and you basically can get spatial photos in iOS 26. So that is a really nice feature, and it even works if you go into a wallpaper. This is honestly one of the things that I'm looking forward to. You now have spatial photos. Although I think it might only be Apple Intelligence devices. You can see it's a little bit of depth effect there. But you now have spatial photos in iOS 26. I will try this feature out if it does work on my iPhone 12. The sooner I update to iOS 26, I will definitely try out this feature. In iOS 26, you also can change the snooze duration on alarm clocks. So if I go into one of my alarms, this won't show up for me as I'm not on the iOS 26 beta. But if I wanted to change the snooze duration, I can. You can change it to, I believe, up to 15 minutes in iOS 26. Now, this is absolutely one of my favorite features, and this has something to do with Safari. How in iOS 18, we have this edge-to-edge type of design with the bottom tab bar. Well, in iOS 26, you now have a floating tab bar, but you have it in a couple variants. If we go down to apps and we scroll down till we get to Safari here, within Safari, we only have two options here. We have the bottom tab bar, which you guys can see here. Then we also have the top tab bar. But both of those are not floating. Well, in iOS 26, you now have them floating. And that's not the only thing. You even have a compact tab bar. It does get rid of the tab switcher, the sort of share button, and the It also gets rid of the bookmark button in the back arrows, but you can access them by pressing the three-dot menu on the floating tab bar. And they're all floating in iOS 26. Now, within the control center, you have a reminders widget. I do use reminders all the time. I've used a couple reminders to make videos, especially for certain videos I've done, like the 3 years later video on my iPad Air 4th generation and my iPhone 12. I use reminders for that. Well, now in iOS 26, they added a reminders control directly to the control center. And speaking of the control center, screen recording gets one of the biggest updates. Now, this is basically how I always do my videos. If you guys been watching my channel since the very beginning, I screen record a lot of my iOS videos and different things like that. I do use the front-facing camera of my iPad when I'm reviewing a product, or when I'm recording a video off my iPhone reviewing my iPad. But most of the time, I'm usually screen recording. Well, now in iOS 26, you can screen record in HDR. That is a really nice feature in iOS 26. If you wear your AirPods and you accidentally fall asleep, in iOS 26, they have a new feature that allows you, or it allows your AirPods to stop playing music when you fall asleep. It will automatically stop the music when you fall asleep. That's a new feature in iOS 26. Now, this feature, unfortunately, is only for Apple Intelligent devices. It wouldn't even work on my iPhone 12 if I was on the beta. It's under battery. You now have battery intelligence in iOS 26. So if you have an iPhone that supports Apple Intelligence, so an iPhone 16 Pro or 16 Pro Max, any of the 16s and the 15 Pro and Pro Max, you now have battery intelligence. You can plug in your device and it will give you an estimated time, how long until 80%, and also how long until 100%. I wish the iPhone 14 had Apple Intelligence, as that's the iPhone that I want to upgrade to, but even that device does not have Apple Intelligence. So unfortunately, that's an iPhone 15 Pro or 16 type of feature. And those are all of the features. There is a lot more features, but those are just 10 hidden features in iOS 26. I look forward to the public beta, which should be released, according to rumors, on July 23rd. It's rumored that we could see iOS 26 public beta July 23rd, but 2 days prior, we could see iOS 26 beta 4. Beta 4 on July 21st. And then 2 days after that, we could see the first public beta. I don't think they're going to re-release beta 4, although they could, but most likely they won't. And then I would not expect beta 5 till August 4th or August 5th. Now, as far as iOS 18.6 beta 4, I would expect that on August 22nd, or July 22nd, rather. And then have the RC on July 28th with a final release on August 4th. However, if Apple is only having 3 betas, then I would expect the RC on July 22nd with a final release on July 28th. So those are some features in iOS 26. I'm excited for the new liquid glass and the new floating tab bar in Safari. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as well as subscribe to my second channel, Hawkins Tech Vlogs. On this current channel, I currently have 262 subscribers, so we're still halfway there to 300 subscribers, and I want to get there by August 10th. I'm Mr. Hawkins with Hawkins Tech, and I'll see you guys later.